Today we will combine the two parshiot of Vayakhel and Pekudei, which are, in fact, the concluding sidrot, parshiot, of the second book of the 5 books of Moses, the book of Shemot, or Exodus, as it's called in Latin. And we call this Shabbat Chazak, because the custom is when we conclude the reading of the Torah, the last one who is called up concludes the brachot, the concluding blessings, and everyone says Chazak, Chazak, Chazek, strong, strong. Let us strengthen ourselves. It's always a very exciting moment to complete another book of the Torah. And yet, there does not seem to be much new in the two parshot, Vayakhel and Pekudei, which to a great extent repeat all of the details of the tabernacle, which were already introduced and enumerated in the parshiot of Truma and Tetzaveh. Nonetheless, the difference being that in the parshiot of Truma and Tetzaveh, they were enumerated in the form of the command from God to Moshe, and then from Moshe to the Jewish people. And in the concluding parshiot of the book of Exodus, Vayakhel and Pekudei, they are repeated as a statement of fact of their implementation by the children of Israel. Nonetheless, the details are repeated, emphasizing the importance and the very essential role of the tabernacle in our spiritual life, not only and perhaps not primarily because of the physical structure of the tabernacle, but because of its spiritual significance, as we will soon discuss, that the commandment of the tabernacle, the Mishkan, is accompanied by the words, "Va'asu li mikdash v'shechanti b'tocham," they shall make for me a holy place, I will dwell within them, a seeming grammatical irregularity, for should it not have said, I will dwell within it? And as the commentaries explain, that the true essence of the tabernacle is the tabernacle, the Mishkan, that each one creates from his own personal life, from his family, from his community, that the indwelling of the divine presence occurs within each and every single individual. Another thing that does not seem to be entirely new, but does have an interesting twist to it, and that will be the topic of my today's Devar Torah, is that Moshe gathers together the people. It is a day after Yom Kippur, and it is related how he is giving over the instructions of the tabernacle and its construction, and a special divine utterance is devoted, even before those details are given, to the Shabbat. Now, the Shabbat, in several contexts up until now in the second book of Moses, was already mentioned in the verse several times in proximity and juxtaposition to the commandments of the tabernacle, which was meant to emphasize and underline in various contexts that as important and as central as the tabernacle is, as the Mishkan is, the home for God, so to speak, which brings God's transcendent presence into our limited finite world, that nonetheless it is still not as important as the Shabbat. It does not supersede the Shabbat. We do not desecrate the Sabbath in order to continue the building or to initiate the building of the tabernacle in any way, shape, or form. The building of the tabernacle, in fact, does mean desecration of Shabbat. It is building activities. And in fact, this juxtaposition gives us, in our oral tradition, the very definition of prohibited Shabbat activities, prohibited Shabbat work activities, which is that those categories of work which were employed in the construction of the tabernacle are those very categories of activities which become prohibited on the Shabbat. And what's going to be essential about this in the metaphoric and symbolic sense is that if what we cannot do on Shabbat are the things that involve the construction of the tabernacle, this means that the essence of what is considered work during the other 6 days is the construction of the tabernacle. It is this that defines what is considered work. And hence, what we have in the symbolic sense is that what we should be doing all week long, 6 days of the week, is constructing this tabernacle, which in this temporary situation until Mashiach comes, means exclusively constructing a personal Mishkan, but particularly what the Mishkan means, which is taking physical and material things and transforming them into something spiritual. This is indeed our very mission during the 6 days of the week. And therefore, we learn something from every activity that is prohibited on Shabbat. Because it was employed in the construction of the Mishkan, we discover from this more about what our mission in life is during the other days of the week. And this is going to be something especially true in this week's Parsha, where there is one very specific work activity that is singled out and indeed is by many considered to be the prototypic prohibited Shabbat activity, which everyone knows that we cannot do on Shabbat, which although all of the other 39 malachot, the 39 prohibited work activities, are alluded to by the juxtaposition of the prohibition of Shabbat together with the commandments of the Mishkan, from which we indirectly learn through the oral tradition that it is these things which are prohibited on Shabbat. But today, the Torah singles out and explicitly mentions another prohibition which cannot be done on Shabbat, which is a very well-known prohibition, and that is not to light a fire on the Shabbat day. And it is this very special and very prominent prohibition of Shabbat which will inspire us today with a special message.